So
Cool.
maybe I'll give a bit of a intro for Ayush, because I think I've talked to you guys a lot about the Hotwire native stuff, and Ayush's book is the one that I really use to learn a lot of that stuff, and I think at least one of you probably has a copy of the book. I also did it with a high school student who's not around down here in Batanga City. Um, and yeah, we've been kind of back and forth on different stuff here and there. He does a lot with Bridgetown, which I've talked to you guys about in the past as well. And but he's deep into middleware at the moment, and so we're going to be talking server logic and stuff, I think, today. Is that right? Is that still the plan?
Yeah, it's going to be just an overview of Rack. Middleware is going to be a part of that, but it's going to be largely an overview of what Rack is, because it's like the underlying thing below Rails and Hanami and Puma and basically everything that powers Ruby web applications. I thought it might be a good topic to talk about.
Yeah, cool. I guess when I say middleware, I always think of Rack as middleware. Not like I think it's more complicated than that. But yeah. So because I know people like with Capybara, it'll deal with Rack as a server, which is faster if you don't need to be handling JavaScript. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could write a web application literally just using Rack. You don't even like need a framework in theory. I mean, you'd have to be mental to do that, but you can. So that's what I'm gonna I'm gonna talk about today. Is like when is it a good idea to just reach for just Rack? You don't need Rails or Sinatra or Hanami or whatever all the time.
Ayush, why don't you let her rip?
Cool. All right. Yeah. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, and I've just turned off my screen sharing.
Okay. Cool. So, yeah, let's get into it. Like I said, I'm talking mainly about Rack today, which it's mainly it's a specification more than a library, and what it does is it specifies a standardized interface between a web server and a web application. So the reason that you can use Puma or Falcon or Unicorn or Passenger or whatever with Rails or Hanami or Bridgetown or anything like interchangeably. You can use any Ruby web server with any Ruby web application. And the reason you can do that is Rack, is because the interface between those two things is standardized by Rack. So it is mainly a specification that you can find on the GitHub repo here. Um, I'm not going to go through it because it's quite long, but it's actually a pretty interesting read. And uh, for a tech spec, it's fairly easy to understand. I've tried to read like RFCs and stuff before and just got lost, but this one's actually pretty easy to understand. And like in theory, you don't even need like the Rack library to be Rack compliant, but it just makes it easier. So like both like all web servers and web applications that I know of will have a Rack dependency, but in theory, you don't actually need it. It is literally just a specification, and if you conform to that spec, the theory is that any server can talk to any web application. And yeah, so this is a repo. So today I'm just gonna get into some live coding. Really, I've got no slides. I am being courageous, and I'm just gonna I am just going to go straight into a demo, and I'll show you what Rack can do. Because you don't actually need like a web framework to run a Ruby web server. You can write it in pure Rack. If it's something super simple, you could just use Rack instead of reaching for a framework. So here I've got an empty folder. So I'm gonna just create a new bundle in there, and I shall add rack. So rack up is a thin layer which automatically detects which web server you have installed. So instead of running the web server directly, you can just run rack up, and through an adapter, it'll just detect magically which server you have and just run that. And we'll also add Puma to use as our web server. Um, ah, First thing to go wrong. There we go. That should sort that. Um, so while that installs, so like um, up until a few months ago, you didn't actually need to install Puma if you were doing this. WebBrick, which is like the most basic Ruby web server you can have, and I think was the default in Rails up until Rails 4, I think. Um, it was included with Rackup, but WebBrick is for all intents and purposes deprecated, so that's why we add Puma, just so we can use that. Then let's create a couple of files. So config.ru is just the conventional entry point for rack. So that's just Ruby likes conventions. This is the convention. So like when you run rack up or rack, this is the file that it'll look for and it'll run. And then we'll just create um, an app file for us just to put our application in. So let's look at like the absolute most basic rack application you can have. So I'll look like that. So a rack application is any object that responds to call. That's it. That is the only requirement. It has to be an object that responds to call. And it's supplied this env. We'll get into that a bit later. And the call method has to respond with an array of three objects. This is your HTTP response code. The middle one is HTTP response headers. So in this case, we will do content type text plain, and this key has to be a string. So you cannot do that because the key will be a symbol. Rack doesn't allow that. It has to be a string. So that's why we need this whole style notation. And the final element is an array, which is your response body. So let's just do hello world, the most basic app. And now in the entry point, we want to run this app. So let's first require it. And to run it, just to run app.new. And now there we go. We have a server running on port 9092. So, and there we go. We have a basic web server up and running. So that's obviously quite simple. So yeah, so this is like the most basic rack application you can have. So let's dig into what this env actually is. So I'm gonna add the debug gem just so we can add a breakpoint and look and inspect it. And yeah, so that's pause the program there. So look at the env. So you can see that this is basically the core of the rack specification, is that the web server has to pause the request and create this env hash. It's just a Ruby hash. And then that gets passed to the rack application. And the rack application has to respond with that array of three objects. And this contains everything you can possibly need to know about the request. It has all these rack things like the query string, if there is one, the path is there, the method, protocol, like everything, HTTP headers, if there are any, or like request headers, they'll be like HTTP underscore header name, really. So like the user agent, the accept, these are all HTTP headers that have been parsed into this hash. So anything you need to process that particular request is contained in this env hash. So this is where you would look for that kind of information. So let's put this env hash to use and route a request based on a path. Actually, before we do that, I'm just gonna show you one more cool thing. So like I said, a rack application can be any object that responds to call, and another object that responds to call is a lambda. So you can actually just do this. Rack app equals this is a valid rack app. You can just use a lambda instead of creating a class, and then you just need to, instead of run app.new, um, you need to do run rack app, because you don't create an instance of a lambda. It's just an object. Uh, and of course, I've screwed something up. Ah, that's because it's another file. Hang on. I'm just gonna put that there. That should, there we go. And there we go. So this is an alternate syntax you can use if you're doing something really simple again. But personally, I like to use classes. It just keeps things nice and organized. But I thought I would demo this syntax just because I wanted to prove that it can really be any object that responds to call. It doesn't have to be a class. Right. Let's get back to this. So since the env um, gives us like the path, we can use that to route a request. So let's amend this method. Um, we can pause the request using this. This is a class that the rack library provides us. It's just a nicer interface for the env hash. It doesn't really do anything clever. It just makes querying the env hash a bit easier. So we can use that. But anything you can access through the rack request class, you can access on the env hash directly as well. So you don't have to use it if you don't want to. Path equals. So if you wanted to do this directly, you do that. So that and that will give you the same thing. And then just do a little query on. So yeah, when we request about, we'll just return a different response. And for everything else, we'll just do hello world. And we got the path from there. And I think it looks good. So let's run this again. Yeah, that's running. So that still runs, that still gives us hello world. If you do about, that gives about me. And if you do anything else, that still returns hello world, because we've just used a catch all else here. We've not had any explicit handling for 404s or anything like that. So like you can see, this is like really low level. You kind of have to specify everything about the server on your own. Um, so, but it also means that it's a lot faster and a lot simpler. You're not pulling in any extra dependencies or anything like that. Um, right. So next thing let's talk about is non-get requests. So we've only looked at a get request. So what if you have a post request which has a body and you need to read that body
Are you at the
to,
point you're not at the point where you could call this from a browser yet, are you?
hey, you can call this from a browser. I
And it would
just,
render plain text
yeah. Let
or
me just
curl
run
or
this again.
whatever.
Yeah. So there you go.
Okay.
It'll
Yeah.
just render plain text. I mean, I could demo this as well since we're here. Uh, if you change this to text HTML, um, so now we're for content type HTML and we're returning HTML. So restart the server. There you go. You have HTML
Yeah.
now.
Nice.
So yeah, it works in a browser. It's absolutely. I was just using curl just because it's simpler, but there's nothing stopping you from running this in the browser and testing it
Yeah,
there.
I just wanted to double. Like I figured you were, but I just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a good shot. I probably should have demoed the HTML thing earlier. I'm pretty sure I had it in my notes, but forgot. So thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, live demos are daunting. Um,
Yeah, well,
right.
it's easy when you're presenting to just like get in the mode and you're just going off on your thing, and then the people
Yeah.
just be like, "Where are we?" or just to at least have those kind of checkpoints of like, okay, do we let's demonstrate for ourselves what we've just done, kind of thing.
Yes.
Uh,
Cool. So next, let's look at a post request. So let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. Um, so from this request object, you can query it for post. So if you do if request.post else, and if you want to use the end directly, it's I believe that that'll give you the method. So yeah, again, this just reads nicer. And Ruby is all about writing elegant code, so that's why I like that more. So request.post, then let's do something dynamic. So to read the body, you have an IO object that you read, and it'll return a string. So it's like it's IO like. So it's not like a Ruby. It's not that, but it's similar to that. So if you do request.body, the read, that'll give you the raw body. We'll do some JSON. So let's do JSON.parse body, and then we'll just return the city. So
I think you need to change it to raw body, right? The JSON parse.
uh oh yeah, good shot. Um oh yeah, and I need to read the key as well. So this is yeah, just reading a very simple body here. So let's restart the server. That works. And now we have to do a post request. So um I'm going to specify a header to say that its content type is JSON. And finally, the data. So this is a very simple JSON object that just specifies a single key of a city. Um, I think most of you guys are in Manila, so let's put that there. I think that should work, and it has not. Why has it not? What have I screwed up? Look at the server logs. All right, that's why. Hey, there we go. So yeah, now we can read a body from the request and return that. And you can handle like all kinds of requests that way. You can do like put or patch or whatever requests you want, or even post. Like yeah, you can handle all request methods the same way. So you can start building like a response tree based on the path and the request type. And obviously, if you're just using like if and else for all this stuff, it's going to start getting out of control, which is why we use web frameworks like Rhoda and Rails and stuff. But under the hood, this is like literally what they're doing. Like all web frameworks or web frameworks will return this kind of array at the end of it. Um, right. What are we doing next? Okay, so let's actually get rid of a lot of this
Hey,
stuff and
Jasper, thanks for coming out.
go back to something simple. Sorry, back to simple response. And I want to demo a different server here. So let's remove Puma and we'll add Falcon, which is, I don't know how many of you have used Falcon, but it's new and I absolutely love it. I don't want to get too much into specifics because Falcon could be a talk in and of itself, but like Puma uses threads for each request. Falcon uses fibers, which are a lot more lightweight and cheaper to create. So you can have a like an order of magnitude higher level of concurrency with Falcon. And you can also have Falcon internet facing directly. Like with Puma, you need to have like an Nginx or a Caddy or something in front of it, which faces the internet. But with Falcon, you can actually point it straight at the internet. So it's something I've been experimenting with just so I can like serve a request like end to end using Ruby code. I haven't quite got to that point yet, but Falcon is the primary tool that I'm using to help me get there. And
Why do you need a reverse proxy for Puma?
well, technically you don't need one. You can point Puma to the internet, but best practice is you use a reverse proxy because Puma is has a is the headroom is the number of threads that you configure it as. So like when you're serving like static assets and things like that that don't require computation, you don't want to tie up a Puma thread to serve requests like that because you're unnecessarily diverting resources away from things that actually need computation. So when you have a reverse proxy, those things are super efficient at serving things like static assets. So that bit of traffic just never hits Puma at all. And Puma can just deal with handling your application traffic. And also, while like setting up SSL with things like Caddy is like a hell of a lot easier than Puma. Like I have tried setting up SSL with Puma and just given up. It can be done. There are resources out there, but it's so much easier with Caddy. So like I don't know if anybody who has pointed Puma directly at the
Caddy being a
internet.
reverse proxy?
It's
I don't
just a
know Caddy.
website. Caddy is it's like a modern equivalent of Nginx.
Okay.
It is a web server. It's written in Go, and it's just a lot easier to configure than Nginx. Like it has a really nice DSL and stuff for configuration. The documentation is really helpful. Like it's basically a modern take on Nginx is how I would describe it. So it is a web server. It's a fully fledged web server. It's not just a reverse proxy, but in a Rails kind of setup, you would use it as a reverse proxy.
Okay. Cheers.
So yep. So since you can point Falcon directly to the internet, I'm also going to do one more thing, which is I'm going to remove rackup. So this is the little gem that I said that automatically detects which server you have, but it's also soft deprecated. So if you go to GitHub um, and go to the rackup page, it should show you somewhere here that it's, yeah. So rackup is soft deprecated because it really restricts the options you can pass to the web server because it obviously has this very narrow interface that is kind of common to all web servers. So if you run Falcon through Rackup, you're gonna like miss out on most of its functionality. Um, so we're just gonna invoke Falcon directly. Oh, and one more thing Falcon does that Puma does not is Falcon is HTTP2 native. So that's the other advantage of Caddy is that Caddy is also HTTP2 native, and so is, and Nginx can be configured as that as well. Puma is HTTP 1.1 only. So when you're like serving a lot of static files, you really want HTTP2 because they can all be sent down the same connection. But HTTP 1.1 obviously needs an individual connection for each resource. So that is one of the big wins of Falcon is it's HTTP2 native. if you run it through Rackup, you can only run it through in HTTP 1.1 mode again because of this small generic surface area. So Falcon has a bundle exec Falcon serve, which will start. There you go. Server is running. And if we, okay, that's because HTTP has another Zoom toolbar is in my way and I can't change the address bar. How do I remove the Zoom toolbar? There we go. Okay, so if I change this to HTTPS, there we go. So we have local HTTPS running. The reason this works just for me is because I do have a self-signed certificate set up locally, which is why it just worked. But with Falcon, it actually makes it really, really easy if you use this gem. So when you use the gem, all you have to do is run a command. All you need to do is run localhost install. It'll create a self-signed cert. It'll install it, and then Falcon will pick it up automatically. So we're serving HTTPS traffic locally using Falcon, which is really cool. And if I bring up the network tab, what filtering? Um, you can see here it's HTTP2. We are serving HTTP2 traffic over HTTPS locally, and that is one of the many reasons why I like Falcon so much. So there we go. So that now we've used a different web server as well. You could, in theory, point this to the internet. I'm not going to get into deployment because that's a whole can of worms in itself. But Falcon has decent documentation. So if you do want to run this on a server with Falcon internet facing, you just read the docs. So I'm going to move on to the next rack concept, which is middleware. So we've covered a rack application, which is just basically call method. You process the request and you return a response. But when you can actually build a rack application like Lego blocks. So a rack middleware is stuff that you insert into like a stack before and after a request is sent to the application. So let me just do a demo here just to make this absolutely clear. So a middleware has to be an object that responds to new and responds to call. And a class is just the easiest way to do that. So there's no point using anything else, I don't think. So when a middleware instance is created, it is passed your app. So like it'll be an instance of your rack app that is passed to the middleware. And you can just store it in an instance variable here. And when it is called, it's the same thing as an app. It's called with your environment here. And so now here you run operations before the request hits the app. Then you call the app. So status headers response body. So this calls your rack applications. In this case, it will call this method there. And yeah, you're just deconstructing the response into status headers and body. And then here you can run more operations after the request comes back. And then you just return the rack response. So this way, it gives you a lot of flexibility into just like a pipeline through which a request is processed. So as a practical demonstration for this, I'm going to show you how to parse a URL param. So like, let's say someone has made a request like that, like local en. And instead of just processing this as a URL param, let's do something a bit more clever with it and use middleware to read this out. So just gonna get rid of all that. And this is our little middleware. And So first thing we do is just make the request a little easier to read with that. And we extract the locale out of the query string. Right. So I'm just using a little regex to match the locale key in the query string. Extract that bit, and the item of the one index will be this matcher here. Using just an ampersand just to make it nil safe. So now once we have the locale, which in this case should be en or whatever the value is, we stick it on the environment. So you can add stuff to this environment if you want, like yeah, like you would use your app name. So this would probably be like my app name, but in this case, let's just put app, just so it doesn't clash with anything else. So stick that in there. Because it's just a hash, you're like more than welcome to put your own stuff in there. Rails puts stuff in there that's like Rails specific. That's what it's meant for, really. And then we just call the app. And then in the app itself, we can read this value. So we can add just a second header here, which would be so the convention for HTTP headers, if you're defining your own, is to start them with X. So X app locale. Uh, right. So this is the end hash that the app gets, and as you can see, we've written to it here, and then we're reading it in the app. And that kind of gives us a way to pass data from middleware to the app. And then like the app could also do something to the request. And then when the request comes back in a different middleware, you might want to choose to operate on the request after you've got it back from the app. It really just depends on what your use case is. This is just a little demo to show you what you can do. So now that you have the middleware, you need to add it to the request pipeline. So out here, just before you call run, you use the keyword use, and that adds it there. And like if you have multiple middleware, it forms like a stack like that. So it'll be like one after the other, and then the app is at the end of that stack. So now we have that. We have a middleware here. Let's restart server, and let's do curl -i. And we have to use HTTPS now because we're running with Falcon. And because I've got a URL param, I need inverted commas. Local equals en. Okay, something's gone wrong, as always. Huh. That did work when I tested it, but okay, let's get rid of that. Okay, that I swear that worked. I don't know what's happened. There we go. We've inserted a header here, x app locale. So that's kind of cool because yeah, we added we almost intercepted the request, added something to it, and then passed it on to the application, and then the app read from what we added, and then constructed the response based on that. So you can use middleware for all kinds of things. Rails uses it for caching, for rate limiting and stuff like that. You can also use it for multi-tenanting. One of my favorite multi-tenanting strategies in Rails is to use a rack middleware to extract the account ID from the URL. And then, like as far as the app is concerned, everything is scoped within an account. there's a lot of use cases. It's a seriously powerful technique you can use. Um, the last demo I want to do is I want to use a middleware that actually comes with rack. So if we just do bundle open rack, there is a module called rack static, and this is a middleware that just serves static assets, static files. Uh, so if you want to just run like a file server, so if you're like using Jekyll or Bridgetown, like a static site generator, that you might just be sticking the HTML pages on GitHub pages or on render or something like that. But if you wanted to run it on a VPS on your own, you don't need like a fancy framework to do it. All you need to do is just write a little rack app that serves static assets. So what we're going to do is get rid of all that. And when we're using rack static, the only thing we need to handle ourselves is the 404 response. So I'm just going to change this, get rid of all that. Um, I'm just going to change that to page not found. And then we need to add the rack static middleware to the application. So that looks like, and we need to require it as well. So the URLs parameter says like where this middleware should intercept requests. So like you could just do something like that. So now only requests that come to /public will be handled by rack static, but we just want it for everything. So let's just leave that blank. Root, this is the root folder. So I'm just going to call this public. And this is your index file. So that's configured rack static. And now we need to actually give it something to serve. So create a public folder. Um, so we have an HTML page. So yeah, rack static will serve all requests from the public folder, and the index is index.html, which we've got here. So, and all we specify in the app is 404. So now we run that. Hey, there we go. We're rendering a file. And if we do anything else, we get file not found. Okay, so that's apparently rack static handles that as well. So might have misread that in the doc somewhere. But anyway, we have like a functioning file server here now. So this is a great way to serve your static websites using rack, using pure Ruby. There's nothing to be afraid of when you're serving static files. You don't have to stick it on a CDN and like be like tied into a provider or anything like that. Stick it on a server, then just either just specify some good caching headers. Again, because you're using rack, you have so much flexibility. You can specify your own caching headers in your rack application here. You have complete control really over how your requests are served. So this is like really low level stuff below every framework. So the last thing I'm going to show you is how Rails kind of deals with this stuff. I'm just going to create a little Rails app. Rails new rack demo. So because I want to prove to you that under the hood, literally all Rails is doing is creating an array of 3 objects and sending that. So if you run bin Rails middleware, this gives you the middleware stack that Rails uses. So these are all rack middleware classes, and you can see there's quite a lot of them. And then at the end of it is it runs application.root. So this is your rack application, and all Rails does is run that at the end of it, um, which is which is really cool once you know what's going on under the hood. And the other thing is how I'm going to show you in a controller. So I'm going to G controller, let's create a little static pages controller here. So if you use self.response, you can write your rack response directly there. So now we have that. Go to the roots file. Cool. So theory is now that since the root is static pages index, we should get content type text plain hello world from this, even though we've not set up a view or anything, which is writing the rack response directly. So let's run the Rails server. Of course, something doesn't work. What have I screwed up here? Not entirely sure, to be honest. Let's see. Undefined local variable, a method media type. Okay. And what if I get rid of that? Okay, I'm gonna have to investigate this a bit later on. Let's see if the internet is helpful. I'm not entirely sure why this isn't working. I will fix this and get back to Al, and then he can share the solution with you guys. But uh, essentially, there is an API like this that you can just write the rack response in Rails directly, because that's what it's doing under the hood. The Rails on Rack guide, I rewrote that recently. It's just gone live. So if you're more interested in how Rails integrates with Rack, check out that guide, which also recommends this API, which doesn't work. So I need to fix that quickly. Uh,
Rails on rack. What are some common use cases for that?
so the most common thing would be adding middleware. So you wouldn't write a rack response directly in Rails. There's no reason that I can think of to do this. This is more of a demo. But rack middleware is something you would use in Rails quite a bit. My 2 favorite use cases for it are multi-tenanting and handling multiple locales. So you in middleware you can read like the account ID, extract it from the URL, and just store it on the env. So when the request hits the Rails app, every root doesn't have to be namespaced by the account ID. You can just have your roots based on application logic, and then you can write like you can just extract the the account ID from the env hash, which you do get access to in Rails. So that way you can scope your entire application to the account ID, but as far as routing is concerned, it's not namespaced by that ID, so you can your roots are more concise. And it's a similar thing with locales as well. You can have either locale passed as a query parameter or as a path component. And in both ways, you can just extract it from the URL. So when the request hits the Rails app, that bit has already been paused and removed. So when you're doing the routing, you don't have to think about like routing based on locale. So like if you have like if all your paths are like this, um, if your
So
paths are like
kind of a flow through that selectively grabs one parameter, whether it's a path parameter or a query.
yeah, because it's you can do whatever you want in middleware, right, on the request. So like if say the you have a localized app and these are what your URLs are like, I mean handling this stuff in your routes file is just going to be bloody painful. So what you could do in your rack middleware is to read this and just remove it from the URL and just store it on the env. So you just do that equals en, which is like extracted from the path component. And
Have you
then
done much data streaming?
no,
No.
I haven't. I mean, I have in like just for experimental reasons,
Hmm.
like because Falcon makes that really easy. So I like I've done it just for demonstration, but I've never done it in like a production setting. So if you
Like
read,
if devices are sending GPS or whatever different state information about themselves on a regular basis,
so
IoT kind of stuff.
I've not done that in production, but I've done it in I've done it just in for prototyping. So if
The
you look
there's a dude,
at
one of the guys who joined us remotely at our earlier meetup is kind of rebuilding the MQTT library for to support MQTT 5
okay,
because the
interesting.
previous maintainer dropped it at 4.
I see.
Yeah, he's
Nice.
out of Australia, and he's like,
Okay.
I can't tell you what I do professionally.
Yeah. I mean, I've used MQTT in my former life as an iOS developer. I worked on a project for Dyson where I was building the application, the iOS app that controls their internet connected vacuum cleaner and air purifiers.
Hmm.
So that all that communication between the app, the cloud server, and the device was all MQTT. So I have done it in that context, but I've never done it in Rails outside. I've never used MQTT in Rails, but I have done like basic streaming just in like quote unquote lab conditions. So like if you see this blog post that I wrote, it does cover streaming bodies and how Rack 3 enables streaming bodies. I'll just pop this in the chat.
What are
Um,
streaming bodies?
um, so instead of in a rack response, instead of having an array as your body, you can have a proc.
Oh, I
So
just noticed Jasper had a comment there about a dot after the ampersand. Do you see that?
no, I literally just saw it right now. So that was probably why. That was probably why that didn't work, and I must have missed that out when I was making my notes.
Sorry about that,
Uh,
Jasper.
yeah. Uh, It's funny how your brain just goes blank when you're doing a tech demo and basic syntax goes out of the window, which is why I was working from these bits of paper. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was probably the solution there. Not entirely sure why the rack response in Rails didn't work, but I will look into that one. But yeah, I guess that's it for my demo. That's covered everything. If there are any questions, happy if you have time, I'm happy to take some questions.
With the MQTT, Jasper, it's the IT XPT standard, which is IT for public transportation, lays out what the MQTT broker does for all the devices that might be on a bus, or in our case, for all the tricycles that are running around and sending data back and forth. But they specify MQTT5, but the MQTT gem for Ruby, the maintainer didn't take it past 4. And so earlier this year, an Aussie dude kind of started reviving it, and I noticed his update about that. So I reached out to him, and so he's working on it. I haven't. He told me to send some bug reports, and I haven't got. I've kind of been hung up on a couple other things, so I haven't quite gotten to that yet. But I'm looking forward to trying to break his shit. Yeah, you can keep going. I think Ayush, Jasper may chip in again, and we'll handle that when it comes. But if you can keep going, please.
Yeah, that's it for my demo. So yeah, just happy to take questions if we have time.
Yeah. Do any of you have any questions? All right, there's one question here. Hi, my name is Artem. Actually, thank you so much for this information that you find time to do it. Thanks so
I
much.
can't really hear that. I don't know about you, Ayush.
No,
And
it's really
I'll
faint.
get you the name of the repository in a sec, Jasper.
Okay. Hello.
Hey,
Hey,
Hi. Thanks so much that you find time. And
my
it's,
pleasure.
yeah, for this really useful information. It's so cool how it looks under the hood. And,
Yeah.
it's really cool because this is a low level, yeah, but it still looks so amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I like about Ruby, that it's just designed to be easily readable at every level.
Yeah. And actually, I have a question regarding your book because I saw that it's last update 2024. Yes. Do you have any plans about your book's Hotwire Codex?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I Right now I don't have any motivation to update it. I really, really want to update it. I was like at the start of the year, I was thinking I will update it, like I do a proper second edition in around the time of Rails World, like because that's when I was anticipating Rails 9. So like my plan for it was to remove all the native app stuff, because I wrote a blog post about this as well. Like when I started writing the book, it was 2022, and the last time I'd worked on iOS at the time was 2019, and the last time I'd worked on Android was 2017. So it was not that long from then till 2022. But now we're 4 years later, and I've been focusing on web, so I haven't really been doing mobile. And Joe Mazzotti has written a much better book on Hotwire native than I ever could, because that's what he does. That is literally his core job. So I was
well,
gonna,
and Strata wasn't even out when you wrote your book the first
yeah,
time around.
exactly. Strata wasn't even out. I had to do an update to include Strata. So the plan
Yeah,
is to,
you were writing custom bridge components and stuff.
yeah, I kind of had an inkling of what it was. I was trying to do something in like the same vein as Strata, and I was not too far from what Strata ended up being actually. But yeah, obviously the latest version does use Strata, and Strata as a name it doesn't even exist anymore. It's Hotwire native, so it is a bit of a moving target, and which is another reason why I want to remove the native stuff. It's not really my core competency anymore. So the plan was to remove the native stuff, re add some stuff on PWAs, so it still maintains like this whole multi-platform ethos, but does it via PWAs now, and obviously introduce the solid trifecta, so solid queue, solid cache, and what's the other one? Solid cable. Um, so that is was and is my plan, but I've lost motivation to make those updates right now, just because with the proliferation of I don't know how many people will actually sit and read a book end to end, um, which is why I'm just not that motivated to do it. So my answer is yes, there will be an update. I can't tell you when. Could be this year, could be next year, could be the year after that. But yeah, at some point I will update it. I just don't know when. But like I would say 80% of that book is still relevant. Like because a lot of it is just core fundamentals. It teaches you just good programming practices and just good Rails basics. Um, I think a lot of it is still relevant, which is why I'm also dragging my feet on it a little bit. But yeah, that's my answer for now. There will be an update. I don't know when.